Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming today. As Hoda mentioned, in the SHL lab, we're interested in maternal behavior and how animals care for their infants. As you probably know, many infants are born pretty helpless. Humans, for example, when they're born, they're not able to walk, talk, or feed themselves. They can't even really hold up their own head. And so care from an adult is really essential for their survival. And for a mother, there is an added bonus of needing to balance the needs of her infant with herself. So an infant has a lot of requirements. Infants need to be fed, they need diaper changes, they need some love. But while the mom is doing this, she also has to focus on the things that she needs herself, which she also needs to eat and sleep and probably shower. And under ideal circumstances, she probably has a support system as well. And so one research question that I'm really interested in is, despite the stress of balancing all these needs between your infant and yourself, what motivates a mother to continue caring for her baby and doing a good job? And so one of the things that I've considered is this instinctual? A lot of animals have instincts to do a variety of behaviors. If you're familiar with migratory animals like monarch butterflies or many birds, they have the instinct to migrate south for the winter. This is something that they're born knowing how to do, they don't need to be taught. But other animals need to be taught things and have learned behaviors. And this is when they are taught by another member of their species how to do something. One example is chimpanzees can use tools to access food, and then they teach that to one another. Next, there's a hormonal hypothesis. During pregnancy, there's a huge hormonal shift in the woman's body, and that hormonal shift continues changing through postpartum and lactation. And it's possible that these changes in the hormones are what's helping motivate the mother to care for her baby. And then a final hypothesis that I'm considering is that perhaps maternal behavior is simply rewarding. Is there some internal positive value to caring for a baby that helps promote the behavior and continue doing it? Now I'm going to introduce another concept to you. So I'm talking to you about maternal behavior. That's when a mom is taking care of her own baby, but in many species, like humans and other social species, there are other adult members that are helping take care of the babies. This is called alloparental behavior. So this can be when the dad is taking care of the baby, an aunt, or even a babysitter. And lots of species do this. As Hoda mentioned, I worked with bottlenose dolphins before, so this is one of my favorite examples. Female bottlenose dolphins live in what's called a maternity bond, which is moms and their babies and other adult females. And when a bottlenose dolphin is going to give birth, she often has a birth buddy where one female will stay with her throughout the whole birth and early postpartum. So anything that the mom needs or the baby needs, she is there to help provide right away. Most commonly, she'll help the baby swim to the surface to take their breath immediately after birth because the mom is still in labor. Another interesting example is the golden snub-nosed monkey. The golden snub-nosed monkey performs something called wet nursing, which is if there are two lactating females at the same time, they will both nurse each other's babies and they'll babysit for each other. So one mom will take both of the babies and the other can take a break, go eat, maybe rest and sleep for a little bit. And then when she's finished with her break, she will take both of the babies and then the other animal will have a turn. In honeybees, one hive only has one mother animal, and that's the queen. The queen is the only animal in the hive that's producing infants, but she is not the one who's taking care of them. The worker bees are the ones who are taking care of the baby bees or the larvae, which is very interesting because they're not their own children. I also have a Florida scrub jay here because birds help alloparent as well. When scrub jays have babies, the babies grow up and don't leave the nest right away. The first generation of babies will stay in the nest and help the parents raise the next set of chicks. They'll help provide food and protection for their younger siblings. And fish also do this sometimes too. The African cichlid also shows the big sister, big brother babysitting behavior where they help take care of the younger fish. And so this leads me to a second question. In addition to why do mothers care for their own babies, why does the village help with the baby too? The village is important for helping raise children in many different animal species, but why are animals that are sometimes even unrelated to infants really motivated to help care for them? And that brings me back to the reward hypothesis. If maybe there's something intrinsically rewarding about childcare that helps promote this behavior. If we're thinking about reward, for the purpose of this talk at least, I'm talking about the chemical dopamine in your brain, which is a reward chemical that helps continue motivating behaviors, and you might experience dopamine when you're doing something you like. So this could be if you're getting a sweet treat like ice cream. This could be if you're spending time with your friends and having a great time. This can also be if you are doing a hobby and really happy with your work. And one example that can go in a positive or negative direction is gambling. When you are gambling and you're on a slot machine and you're playing again and again and again and again, and you win, that feeling of excitement when you win is the dopamine. And that dopamine is motivating you to continue gambling and put more money in to play again and again and again, because you're hoping that you get money again, which is why it can go either direction, because dopamine and reward circuits are also closely linked to addiction, and so they can go into the positive direction of joy or the negative direction of potentially addiction. If you have been on social media in the last year, you've probably heard people use dopamine in a lot of different contexts. I see posts all the time about dopamine loops or dopamine farming. Similar to playing a slot machine, scrolling on social media is a similar behavior where you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, looking for something. And then whatever that thing is, once you find it, it reinforces the behavior and makes you want to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll again. Now, how can I study this in mice? Now, mice are really fantastic caretakers. This is a mouse in the lab. A former postdoc Roman took these really beautiful pictures. So these are the mice that I work with, but the reason why I work with them is because they will do anything to take care of their babies. I'm going to show you a video of a flood. In the flood, right here-ish is the mouse's burrow, and her babies are in there. But it's flooded, so they are all in danger right now, and you're going to see her save them. Yeah, so you can see that the mouse is diving under the water to grab her babies, running up the stairs to bring them somewhere safe, and as soon as she drops the baby off, she immediately runs back in the water, dives in to grab the baby again. And this is really amazing because it's a really selfless behavior. She's putting herself at risk to save the babies, and she's not just saving one, she's going back again and again and again to make sure that all of them are safe. So that tells me that this is a very motivated behavior. She really wants to bring these babies to safety. I'm going to show you a different video now, because while this is a really amazing behavior, I am not doing this in the lab. I am not putting baby mice underwater and asking a mouse to dive for them. There's a much safer way that we could do this in the lab, which is a behavior assay called pup retrieval. I put the mouse and her pups into a cage, and it has a nest. In this video, her nest is right here, and then I take the pups out of the nest and scatter them. If you take the pups out of the nest, the mouse really wants to bring them back to the nest, and she will do something similar to what we saw in the last video, which is leave the nest, run and get the babies, and then bring them back. Okay, so you can see that similar to last video, she doesn't stop with one baby, she wants to collect all of them. And that's because the nest is the safe spot for the mouse. Many mice are agoraphobic, which just means that they're fearful of large spaces. Some of their natural predators include birds, and so if a baby's in an open field, it's possible the bird could swoop in and grab it. The nest is safe and warm, she knows where it is, and so the mouse really wants her babies to be there. But interestingly, this video is not a mother mouse, because mice also display alloparental behaviors, and this is a virgin mouse. She's never been pregnant or had her own pups. I gave her a nest and some babies. I took the babies out of the nest, and she knows to put them back in the nest. And so, as a neuroscientist, in addition to this behavior, I really want to know what's happening inside of the brain to help promote this behavior and make the animal want to continue doing this over and over and over again. Because if I give this mouse baby pups all day long, I could give her 100, she would collect the pups 100 times. And it's interesting because at some point you think it would probably get boring, but they really want to do it, so they keep doing it. Some brain regions that I'm interested in, I'm going to abbreviate them here and then tell you on the next slide what they are the ventral tegmental area, nucleus accumbens, and the basolateral amygdala. We're going to start out with the VTA and nucleus accumbens. These are the two primary reward centers in the brain. They're really, really well studied for reward and addiction. And if you remember, I told you about dopamine earlier. Dopamine is produced in the ventral tegmental area. The cells or the neurons that produce dopamine are in VTA, and they project to nucleus accumbens, and then they release the dopamine in nucleus accumbens. So together, these are the reward centers of the brain. And then I am able to use a genetic tool to make the dopamine cells glow or fluoresce when they're active. And so when an animal is releasing dopamine in its brain, I can make the cells physically glow and then put a fiber optic cord into the brain to measure how much the cells are glowing. And I'm going to talk about this as fluorescence. And because these cells are glowing and it's just recording the fluorescence in the general area, I can't tell if this dopamine neuron or this dopamine neuron is the one active. I just know that one of them is active, so I call this a population recording. And this looks something like this. So this video and the data beneath it are from another postdoc in the lab, Yin Yao. And what she did is she did a pop retrieval assay. The colors are a little light, so I labeled where the nest and the pups are for you. And then on the bottom is a live readout of the fluorescence of the VTA dopamine neurons while the mouse is collecting the pups. And as the line goes up, that tells you that there's more fluorescence and more activity of the cells. And then when it goes down, there's less activity. So you can see the mouse is approaching her pup and then picks it up. She has some dopamine activity, brings it back to the nest. This is the next one. I don't know why she had less of a dopamine response to that one. There's the third one. And then if you've guessed the pattern already, you can suspect she's probably about to pick up the fourth pup. And she does. So what this is telling me is that the reward center of her brain is activated when she's retrieving the pups to the nest. And she may find this rewarding. That may be what's helping reinforce the behavior and motivate her to continue doing it. And what I'm doing in my project is something very similar, but instead of recording the dopamine neurons in the VTA, I'm recording the dopamine in the nucleus accumbens. I have another fluorescent sensor that does the same thing, and instead of glowing when the cells are active, it glows whenever dopamine is nearby. It's kind of like a dopamine sniffer, so whenever it just detects dopamine nearby, it glows, and then I can record how much fluorescence is being detected while the mouse is behaving. And because I'm interested in adult parental behavior, I am looking at mother mice doing this. I'm also looking at what I call high-experienced virgin mice. These are virgin mice that live with the mother mouse, and the mother mouse will teach them how to take care of the pups. And so she has a teacher to show her what to do. And then the third group of mice are called my low-experienced virgin mice. They do not live with the pups. They do not live with the mom. They have never met a pup before other than when they themselves was a baby until they go into my experiment. And then I give them pups and I see what they do. And I'm recording dopamine and nucleus accumbens. So the first graph I'll show you, this is very similar to the moving graph I just showed you, but it's only focused on the moment that the mom is picking up the pups. So the dotted line is when she's putting her mouth on the pup to bring it back to the nest. You can see that the mother mouse has an increase in dopamine activity when she picks up her baby. The high-experienced mouse also has an increase in dopamine when she puts the baby to the nest. And interestingly, the low-experienced mouse not only picks up the pups and brings them to the nest and does a very good job at it, she also has a dopamine response to these pups where theoretically she probably doesn't really know what a pup is because she's never had any before, but somehow she knows to pick them up, take them back to the nest, and she has a reward signal in nucleus accumbens to pair with it. And so this brings me back to my original question of why do mothers care for their babies, but I'm now expanding it to why do mothers and babysitters care for babies. I answer the hormonal question by looking at mothers. The mothers have the full postpartum or prenatal and postpartum hormonal change and perform the behavior. So I know that that may be part of the behavior. And the high experienced virgins do learn the behavior and successfully bring the babies back to the nest after the mom teaches it to them. They can do it independently. The part that's very exciting is that the low experienced animals are able to do this without any pregnancy hormones or any teacher, which tells me that this must be instinctual because they have nothing to show them how to do it. And then finally, if we go back to reward, which I told you was one of my favorite questions, in all of the groups I've shown you and all of the reward regions I've shown you, all of the animals have a dopamine response to pup retrieval, so maybe they find it rewarding to take care of their babies. Okay, so I have one more brain region for you, and it's called the basolateral amygdala. One of the reasons that I'm looking at the basolateral amygdala is because some of the dopamine neurons from VTA do go to the amygdala, but if you know anything about the amygdala, it's commonly called the emotional processing center. And so while it is interpreting some reward, it's also responding to a lot of other things like fear or other emotions, maybe love. And so it's doing more than just dopamine. And I want to look at it in a new way. So there's a lot of different cells in the amygdala. They're responding to different things. And I want to kind of look at all of them at the same time. There is another technique that I can use, which uses a miniature microscope lens in the mouse's brain. So I use the same genetic techniques to make all of the cells glow, but instead of recording all of them, if I want to look for patterns for specific cells, I can put a microscope lens in and get a picture of the cells glowing. This doesn't hurt the mouse. This is a miniature microscope on the mouse's head. You would be very surprised to know that it's very lightweight. It doesn't bother the mice. They can walk around very normally wearing it. When you think of microscope, people think of like really big, heavy things, but this is very specially designed to be worn while the mouse is walking around and behaving normally. So I'm going to show you what this picture looks like. I'm also very excited about this because this is very, very new data from the lab. We just recorded this earlier this month. I think March 10th-ish is about when we collected this data. So from the microscope lens, just a screenshot of neurons. Looks like this. The little glowy white circles are the actual cells. I'm going to have one circled to focus on the pattern of just one. So that's the one neuron. And then similar to the other graphs I've shown you of changes in fluorescence, I can look over time of the changes in fluorescence of just this one cell. But what's really cool is that I can do pup retrieval at the same time and watch all of the cells respond in real time. So this last video, the nest and the mouse are in the bottom, and then the 3 boxes are where the pups are. So you can watch the retrieval, and then you can also watch this video here. These are the live responses of the cells in the amygdala while the mouse is collecting the pups. You'll also notice some of the cells are doing different things at different times. Not a lot of cells were glowing when she picked up the first pup, but as the video progresses, you'll see more and more starting to glow. And so what I'm going to do with this is try to look at the patterns and see, like, are the same 2 cells glowing every time she picks up a pup? Are the same 3 cells glowing every time she brings it back to the nest? And things like that. I think this is the last pup. And then after she collects the last pup, she'll check one more time. We call this search, just to make sure that there aren't any babies that need to be brought back to the nest. And then similar to the video that I showed you earlier, this is also a low experience virgin mouse. So this is a virgin mouse that has never been pregnant, never lived with a mom or pups, and never had a teacher. She's just instinctually bringing the pups back to the nest. And I think that's it. Okay, so I'm telling you a lot about mice and mouse reward systems, but why do we care about this, and how can this help human health? Earlier I mentioned that dopamine is really well studied in things like addiction, and these reward circuits are also implicated in things like depression. A common symptom of depression is anhedonia, where things that were previously rewarding are no longer rewarding to people. And the amygdala is also, as an emotional processing center, implicated in a lot of mental health disorders. And so something that I'm focusing on, especially when I'm thinking about the postpartum time period, is the mental health crisis, specifically in the US. In the US, 1 in 7 women will experience some sort of mental health issue in the postpartum period. And it's reported that 1 in 5 women experience postpartum depression. But I will say the caveat to this is that these numbers are really widely underreported. Women are very fearful of honestly answering depression screenings postpartum. This is partially due to stigma about postpartum depression or lack of knowledge about it, but also because many women report that they're fearful, if they're honest about this, that someone may take their children from them. And so because of this, up to 75% of women do not receive treatment for their postpartum mental health issues. And unfortunately, suicide is currently the leading cause of postpartum death in the United States. I also mention this because the US specifically has a maternal mortality crisis when compared to the rest of the world. This next graph I'm going to show you is the maternal mortality across the world in high-income countries per 100,000 births. So you can see on the left, the Netherlands, for example, out of every 100,000 births, about 1 woman is affected by maternal mortality. But then when you move over to Korea, 11, New Zealand, 13, the US has about 20 women dying per 100,000 births, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is, and it's significantly higher than other countries that are comparable socioeconomically. And the last thing I will say about this is that there is a huge disproportionate racial disparity embedded in this. Black women in the US are much more affected by the maternal mortality crisis than any other country, and also within the US. And so this is concerning, and more research and assistance is absolutely needed in this area to help with this. And so something I've added in this talk is because maternal mental health issues are really undertreated and not understood, I think it's important to share resources with people of where to get help or where to send someone if you suspect that someone around you may be struggling. And then this is the end. So I'm going to leave you with some take-home messages too. The first is that caregiving is one of the most biologically motivated behaviors. Reward systems under normal circumstances do support this behavior, but by studying these reward circuits and the basic biology of how this works in the brain, we can help further research to help with maternal mental health research and hopefully one day reduce the number of postnatal deaths in the US. So that's that. Thank you, Thomas, for inviting me to do this. I also want to thank my boss, Steve, is here, and then Hoda for introducing me, and then also the mice for the experiments.